Good morning.
Morning.
Happy fall. Doesn't it really feel like actually it's almost winter? But so grateful for all of you who come out in the cold and join us today. I'm really excited for today. I'm so excited that we get to start our new sermon series today. And this is going more into depth on another point in our vision statement. So I know many of you have heard it a few times, but I feel like, what is it? Repetition is actually really good. I heard somebody sharing, when you give a speech, first you tell people what you're going to tell them, and then you tell them what you're going to tell them, and then you wrap up by telling them what you just told them. And then maybe they'll remember something of what you told them. So I want to go over our entire vision with you once at the beginning of this series, just to give you the feel of what we are creating in our community. And then we're going to go into depth. We're in our third point about spiritual maturity. And we're going to go into the first topic in our point of spiritual maturity. So this is not our sermon series, A Home for All. Sorry, I didn't change that slide. But our sermon series is on spiritual maturity and the fruits of the Spirit, kind of like the topic that Mike talked on last time. Okay, our vision. We are a place where people from all walks of life can find love, acceptance, inspiration, guidance, purpose, joy, and fulfillment. We are a church that isn't a church, but a family where the experience of community, love, and God's grace abound. We are every person growing to spiritual maturity through studying God's Word, prayer, making devotions, small groups, and taking on a ministry to care for the needs of and give to others. We are equipping every person for a significant ministry by helping them discover the gifts and talents that God gave them. We are building God-centered marriages and families that are the dwelling place of God and the cornerstone of a healthy society. We are sharing with the people of the Denver area truth that has been hidden in the Bible until now. God's original purpose of creation, how humanity fell away from God, and our path to returning to God's ideal and dream. We own a beautiful and modern building that serves as the hub for all of our many family and faith-based activities going on throughout the week. And we are a community that embodies the legacy of living for the sake of others and building the kingdom of heaven here on earth that our founders, Reverend and Mrs. Moon, whom we call the true parents, have passed on to us. So that is our vision. It's also at the back of the room. If you'd like to spend a few minutes pondering it and poring over it, you're welcome to do that after service. But our new series will be going into this point. We are every person growing to spiritual maturity through studying God's Word, prayer, making devotions, small groups, and taking on a ministry to care for the needs of and give to others. So these points of studying, prayer, making devotions or conditions, small groups and relationships, and then initiating, right, and giving back. These are really the fundamentals of our spiritual life. These are like the pillars that hold our spiritual life together. And they're all crucially important to our life of faith and ultimately to our happiness. So I guess you could say they're essential for our spiritual health. And when I say health, it makes me think of, just how we need food and nutrition and sunlight and air and exercise for our physical body to be healthy. We need these elements for our spirit to be healthy. But I think sometimes, especially if we're not always in the practice of these things, it's hard to feel the value or importance of them. So I want to talk a little bit about the physical side a little bit. I'm just going to share a little bit about my journey over the past year. It was actually the end of August last year when my sister and I decided that we would again do this ultramarathon kayak race across the state of Missouri. And at the moment that we decided to do it, I knew that I was not prepared to do it. There is no way that my body could have accomplished that at that time. So I knew I had to prepare myself, I had to strengthen myself, and I had to make myself healthy and ready to go through whatever I needed to go through. So beginning that fall and winter, Mike and I, we signed up with the Wheat Ridge Rec Center, we got memberships, and we started going twice a week to exercise. And honestly, I just started out with stretching at first. I didn't even have exercise shoes. So I would just lie on the floor and stretch my arms and my legs. and I would feel worn out afterwards. And I wasn't even I wasn't raising my heart rate or anything. But after a few weeks of that, I finally got my shoes, and I started to feel stronger, even just with a little bit that I was consistently doing. And then I began to do a little bit of running, and then a little bit of weightlifting. And then my friend, she invited me to go swimming with her because she was pregnant at the time. And you can't do a whole lot of exercise when you're 7 months pregnant, but she could do swimming. So she's like, will you swim with me? And to be honest, I never wanted to swim. My mom was a swimmer. She did synchronized swimming, and she was a lifeguard. And as a kid, she was always like, come on, Adonia, let me teach you the strokes. This is the breaststroke, and this is the backstroke. And I was like, Mom, that's old people stuff. I just want to look at the fish in the creek. So I've always avoided actually learning how to actually swim. But because my friend wanted support in swimming, I was like, okay, fine. And then I learned that swimming is actually the best cross-training for kayaking. So I was like, okay, I guess it's a sign I should do this. And I began swimming and loved it. And so for about 9 months, I was training and preparing and strengthening myself to be able to do this race. And we did the race, and it was crazy. And because I had this habit, that was in July. So about 2 or 3 months after that, I continued to go back to the rec center twice a week, swimming and exercising. It felt good. But I realized that the more time that passed, it was a little easier to be like, oh, I think we're too busy today. It's pretty cold outside and the water feels cold, so maybe I'll just go to the sauna today. And without this purpose or without a goal motivating me to exercise, little by little started to fall out of my habits. And I learned a couple things from this. First of all, we need a purpose, or we need a goal for our life, to have the motivation or the drive or the energy to do what we need to do. Even if we don't always feel like it, but if we have something that's powerfully calling us forward, we can do it. Another thing I learned is that you don't always see the benefits right away, right? For the first few weeks, as I was just stretching and stuff, beginning to run and feeling really tired afterwards, I hadn't lost any weight yet, or I hadn't noticed any muscle growth yet. It kind of feels like you're just wasting energy. Or if you're reading the Bible or reading God's words, it can kind of feel like a waste of time because you don't see the benefit yet in your life. But if you keep with it, you start to notice, oh, actually, I feel so much better. even though I'm expending energy, I actually feel like I have more energy throughout the day. And wow, look at these muscles. That's so exciting. And before you know it, you can hardly believe that you were so unhealthy before and you didn't even notice it. Because you didn't know what real health, or in this case, what real spiritual health felt like. And another lesson I learned is that without the commitment and the consistency to practice it and having the purpose and the goal, you will start to fade away from it. And you don't notice the consequences at first because you've got some momentum. You know, you have good benefits. You don't lose your muscles the first day that you don't work out, right? You still have them for a while. But without the consistency, it starts to fade. Then you feel like you're too far gone. At least that was my case. But, same thing with your spiritual life. It's not always easy to start a new habit. It's not always easy to start praying. When you're not in the habit of praying, it can feel very awkward. Or it can feel like, who am I actually talking to? What kind of a relationship do I have with this being that I can't see? Or small groups, or taking care of other people. These are things that don't always feel comfortable, or don't always feel like it's a worthwhile investment of your time in the beginning. But then as you go, you start to see the benefits, and you begin to realize, I didn't even know what I was missing out on before. So, and also, I don't know if this is the case with everybody, but for myself, I've also noticed that my spiritual health and my physical health are closely tied together. Does anybody else see the correlation sometimes? Okay, good. I've noticed that it's hard to say, is it the chicken or the egg that comes first? Was it that I stopped exercising as much that kind of led me to not be so motivated to read in the mornings? Or did I kind of lose my vision for why I was reading, and it kind of sapped my energy, and then led me to not feel like exercising as much in the mornings? I feel like it's so closely correlated because God made our whole being. Sometimes we think of our spirit bodies relating to God and our physical body was relating to this earth, but God made the whole thing. And we're supposed to take care of the whole thing, right? So when we're taking care of both our spiritual body and our physical body, then that's when we really feel like I'm living my purpose, right? So, these are these fundamentals, these are these pillars that we work on and what we'll be going into throughout the sermon series to creating our spiritual health. And today is the first point on studying God's Word. So, today's topic is God's words as a guide. I have a couple of quotes just to kind of lead into this topic. This is from 1 Peter chapter 1, verse 24 to 25. For all people are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. The grass withers and the flowers fall, but the word of the Lord endures forever. And this is the word that was preached to you. And this is a quote from Reverend Moon, founder of our faith. You should study wherever you gather, and whenever you have time, night or day. You should read it 100 or even 1,000 times until it becomes your own, and you become the substantial object to that book. From now on, you should practice such things. When I read this, I think, have I read anything 1,000 times? I don't know. But the point of this is that when we immerse ourselves in truth, when we immerse ourselves in goodness and what is right, then it becomes our own. We're not just reading something that came out of somebody else's mouth, but we we begin to become the substantial object. That means it forms us. It creates our life. So that when people see what we're doing in our life, or they hear the words that we're saying in our life, they are actually seeing God. They are actually seeing truth in front of their eyes, right? So this is kind of setting the stage for why we study God's words. Back to the topic of God's word as a guide. I'm sure most of you know that if you have a question, where can you get your question answered? Yes! Google, right? Just the other day, Aiden asked me, he was trying to figure out this answer in this puzzle book, and he said, is Texas the biggest state? And I was like, I don't think so. I think it's Alaska, but I'm not 100% sure. So I Googled it. Actually, Texas can fit into Alaska 2 times, just so you know. You can fit Texas, California, and Montana into the square footage of Alaska. Wow. I didn't know that, but Google knew it. But it's so easy to turn to Google or to turn to others for our answers. Actually, one of the most frequently, if you type in a search on Google, it offers suggestions of what you might be searching for. And if you type in "what is" on Google, one of the first things that pops up is the purpose of my life. That doesn't mean that Google says this is the purpose of your life. That means that this many people are asking Google what is the purpose of their life. It's kind of mind-boggling to me. But we do it. We go to others for our answers. And we go to others for our evidence and for our facts. But what's crazy is that, on almost any topic, if you go online and you search for, is this right or is this wrong, you will find lots and lots and lots of answers and evidence as to why this is right. And you will also find lots and lots and lots of answers and evidence as to why that exact same thing is wrong. So, who's right and who's wrong? Parenting, oh my gosh. I was so grateful that when I became a parent, I wasn't on the internet that much. And I was able to just kind of follow my heart and find what I felt was the best way to parent my kids. But if you go online and you ask Google how to parent your kids, you will find so much conflicting answers, right? These people say, oh, your baby should, if you can't get your baby to sleep at night, let them cry it out. They might cry a couple hours the first night, but, the next night it'll only be half an hour, the next night it'll only be 5 minutes, so let them cry it out. But then the other group say, that's child abuse. Don't do that. If they cry, pick them up immediately. They need to feel your warmth and they need to hear your heartbeat. And even if you don't get any sleep at night, it's okay because your baby's happy. And there's all kinds of scientific evidence of why you should let your baby cry it out or why you should pick up your baby as soon as it cries. So what's right? Never look online for parenting advice. You'll only feel like a bad parent. Oh man, every single topic you could think of. Politics, education styles, environmental concerns, every single thing. You can find loads and loads and loads of answers. But where should we go for the answers to the questions of our heart? Maybe we should go to the source of creation. Maybe we should go to the source of the things that we have questions about. Right? So that is why we're talking about God's words as a guide. This is a quote from Psalms 119, verse 1. But Reverend Moon said that with the truth, all the economical, all the political problems in this world, they already have an answer. But the problem is we're just trying to use our own thinking. We're trying to follow our emotions, our heart. We're reacting to things. We're just like going all over the place trying to find the right things to do. But the answer is already there. But how many of us are turning to God for the answers to our questions? So, what I feel like this is leading up to is that I believe that through reading God's words, it should become evident in our life. The more we read, the more our life reflects truth. The more our life reflects true love. The more our life reflects God's image. I feel like it should be a natural assimilation process. You know, as you're reading and something strikes you, you think, oh, this is what I should be saying to my wife instead of this. Thank goodness, I know, and now I can do the right thing. Or sometimes we're kind of stuck in this situation of sometimes it's selfishness or frustration. And I feel like it should be that when we read a sentence from the Bible or a sentence from the divine principle, many times there's something that strikes you and think, oh, this is the way it should be. And then we naturally implement that, and then we're not the same person we were before we read it. I think that's the way it's naturally supposed to flow. But unfortunately, that's not always the way it flows, is it? And there are some people who I think are really proud of their reading habits, but maybe they haven't seen any changes in their life for the last 5 or 10 or 20 years. It reminds me of this quote from, here we go. This is from James, chapter 1, verses 23 through 25. Do not merely listen to the word and so deceive yourselves. Do what it says. Anyone who listens to the word but does not do what it says is like someone who looks at his face in a mirror and, after looking at himself, goes away and immediately forgets what he looks like. But whoever looks intently into the perfect law that gives freedom and continues in it, not forgetting what they have heard, but doing it, will be blessed in what they do. But sometimes we're like that person who looks in the mirror and forgets what they look like. And I don't know what causes that for everybody. Maybe some people feel like, I'm pretty good, my life is pretty good where I'm at. I feel good about what I'm reading and I feel like I'm already doing it, so I don't need to change anything. But I think for myself, what it is that what my hang-up is that I know that when I read truth, knowing that I am not yet a perfect person, that I'm going to find something that makes me uncomfortable because I'm scared of change. Or it means I have to give up a little bit of my selfish habits and I have to do something that's more unselfish. It means I have to get out of my comfort zone a little bit, to talk to somebody, or to forgive somebody, or to ask forgiveness from somebody. That's the hard part, isn't it? I think that's where, I don't know for you guys, but for myself, that's where my hesitation comes in reading God's words is, I don't want to be somebody who just reads it and then forgets what I read, but I don't always really want to be vulnerable and do what it says either. But I have to remind remind myself that the moments in my life when I felt the most alive are the moments when I was courageous and I changed something in myself, I changed a habit, or I got out of my comfort zone and did something new. Those are the moments when I actually felt most alive. So, it's okay. This is another quote I feel like can be helpful for us. You must not be studying with your brain, your reason alone, but you must learn God's heart from that. You must feel those things which you are studying. And I think this is really key because I feel like it's such a common misunderstanding of religion, maybe, where I feel like I should be reading God's words, and if I am not, then I am bad. Or I am a good Christian if I read my Bible every day, and if I am not, then I am not a good Christian. Or, if I can answer the trivia questions on the Bible or my principle, then I know I'm doing things right. But one of our best teachers says what we really should be doing is learning God's heart from what we are reading and feeling the things that we are reading. I find that when I'm not just feeling like these words are being forced onto me or that I have to adopt them, but when I'm actually seeing from God's point of view, then it's not so hard to accept it. It's not so hard to change something. When I'm feeling God's love through the words that I read, then it makes me want to give God's love to the people in my life. When it goes from your head to your heart, then it's a different experience. So how do we do this? I think there are many different practices of reading God's words. And I don't think that there's any totally right or totally wrong way to do it. But some of the guidance that we've been given, especially from Reverend Moon, says read 1 hour a day. And I know some of you are thinking, I don't even have 15 minutes in a day. I can't do 1 hour a day. But maybe consider the possibility that we could find an hour in a day to read. And if it's not an hour, maybe start off kind of like how I did, just starting with stretches. My exercise, my stretches for 30 minutes. Maybe it's half an hour, maybe it's 15 minutes. Maybe it's just downloading one of those devotions apps, right? There's Christian apps that have one Bible verse a day that just pops up on your phone, so you can't ignore it. You can read it. There's also the Samya Moon Quotes app, where every day you're given a quote, got beautiful background. And then let that sink in. Read it a few times. Let it sink in. But I think there is value in reading more, because the more time we spend on something, the more that becomes a priority in our life, right? Have you ever noticed that when you spend several hours on Facebook throughout a day, that suddenly your life becomes stressed by everybody else's stresses in their life, and the fear of missing out of the great things that other people are doing in their life, and it becomes much less about your own life. I have a new phone. It's actually Mike's old phone, but it does this thing now where it, at the end of the day, a little pop-up comes that says, this is how much time you spent on your phone today. This is how much time you spent on social media today. This is how much time you spent in productivity. It's 33 minutes above average. It's very sobering. But really, what we spend our time on is it shows something about what our priorities are. So with that, consider, how much time do we spend thinking about God, devoting to God in a day? Also, when should we read? Again, I don't think there's any right or wrong time. I was reading another quote by Reverend Moon, and he said, Read an hour every morning. Do it the first thing in the morning. But if you can't do it in the morning, do it the last thing at night. But do it. But I actually think that there's a lot of wisdom behind reading first thing in the morning. And I don't consider myself a morning person, but I do know that when I start the morning with God's words, it's very different than ending my day with God's words. Because I'm a person who gets easily overrun by my day. If I don't start my day with purpose and in control, before I know it, I've got kids climbing all over me in bed, and I've frustrated them because they're loud, and oh my gosh, we're late for school, and oh my gosh, and now I'm late for I can't get my shopping done in time in order to get to the rec center in time, and it's just like my life, I feel like I'm in a hamster wheel, but I'm being, every once in a while I get flipped by it because I can't run fast enough. That's what I feel like life can be like sometimes. And then, at the end of the day, if I read at the end of the day, I'm like, well, I should have done this. Too bad I didn't know this earlier in the day. But then I go to sleep, and, I go to sleep, and then I don't have a chance to act right away on what I've learned. But if we take God's words first thing in the morning, it's like it's shining a light on my path. It's like, oh yeah, that's where I'm going. This is my maker. I'm going to God. So rather than screaming at my kids because somebody stepped on my face when I woke up, I remember, oh yeah, this is my precious daughter of God. She's so wonderful. And it just gives me the power to switch little things throughout my day that creates my day. God's words creates my day. And it helps me to feel like I'm actually in control of my life. But actually, I'm inviting God to be in control of my life by reading first thing in the morning. And then the last thing is that not only should we be reading, but we need to interact with the words. I have had so many experiences of getting up in the morning and reading, and I'm like, okay, good, I read my so many pages or my numbers, and then I close the book and I don't remember a single thing that I read. So how do we go from that to actually keeping something, right? Keeping it present in our lives. My husband had some great suggestions. One thing you can do is read it out loud. You can do it to yourself. It's even better if you have somebody to read out loud too, because when we're engaging not just our eyes, but when we're using our voice, it's stimulating our brain in a different way. Because not only are we using our voice, we're also hearing it with our ears. And if we're reading it to somebody, then it's like we're having a conversation, and it becomes more real. Another thing you could do, maybe if you don't have somebody to read to, you can look for some point that you can share about with your spouse later, or your child, or your parent, or your friend. You can find some point that says, oh, this was so interesting. I was reading this today. What do you think about this? Or you can find something, read until you find something that you find relates to your life. Either something that happened in your past, like, oh my gosh, this reminds me of that one time when I was so mad at my mom, but then I realized how much she loved me, and then I realized the love of a parent, and that's the love of God. Relate it to something in your life that makes it real. Like he said, not just in your brain, but in your feelings. Or, even better, find something in your life right now that you can apply it to. You could also pick out your favorite sentence from the day and write it down. You could put it in your phone. You could write it on your paper and stick it in your car. Something I really enjoy actually is, now that I have my new phone and it has the quotes app on it, every morning when I wake up, there's a quote that pops up, and then I read it. And typically when I'm done with something, I kind of swipe it off my page, and then it doesn't come up every time. But with my quotes, I'm training myself not to swipe it away, so that every time I turn on my phone, I see, oh, I have a quote to read. And so then throughout the day, whenever I open my phone, I read it, 5 or 6 times a day. And then it settles in, the more I read it. So I don't know what it is for you, but those are some, I think, practical tips. Maybe you can think of something in there that you feel like you could apply into your life. But ultimately, why? Why read God's words? Again, I feel like it's so easy for us to feel like, well, because I have to. Because that's what I've been taught I should do. And if I'm not doing it, I'm not doing what I should be doing. If I'm not doing what I should be doing, I'm doing something wrong. But I don't think that's God's heart. But then why? Why should I study God's words? Why is this important for my life? Well, let's take it back to the basics. If you open the Divine Principle, which is one of our books and scriptures in our faith, the very first sentences of this book state that every person in this world, without exception, doesn't matter who you are, where you're born, how much money you have, what good or bad things you've done in your life, every single one of us, without exception, is seeking happiness and trying to avoid misfortune. This is what drives our daily decisions. They may not always be good decisions, but we think that by doing what we do, we'll somehow get to where we want to go, get something better, or at least avoid more problems. But it's easy to look for happiness in the wrong places. It's easy to look for fulfillment in the wrong places. I know for myself, I may have told you about 3 years ago I won a trip to the Bahamas. It was from a little card in a box at H Mart, free vacation for 2. And so about 3 years ago I won this vacation, but I was pregnant with Annalise, and I couldn't go on it at the time, so they gave me an extension, and then we had it set for last year, and then the hurricanes happened, and it got postponed, and finally, we're going to be taking it next Monday. So I'm so excited. But don't clap too much, guys, because I've discovered that somewhere myself, I'm like, this is where my happiness is. I'm so happy. And it's like, that's what I'm looking forward to in my life right now. But I know that's not true happiness. I will definitely find happiness. I'm looking forward to spending time with my husband and deepening our relationship and refreshing myself. But we do that, don't we? We're looking for happiness in other places. Now here's a good quote. Unless we truly accept and return to God's morality and God's principle of love, no search for happiness will be satisfied. So how do we accept and return to God's morality and God's principle of love? Well, we have to at least know what it is. It sounds good. Oh yeah, true love, morality. But it's through studying God's words a little bit every day, then we truly understand what this is. And then more and more consistently, we can make the decisions that lead us towards this. And we can avoid the pitfalls or the false happiness that tempts us from either side. Right? Through truth, through understanding, through the light on our path, we can know the direction that will actually bring us happiness. So that is my message for today. I'm really excited to go into the further points which show deeper how to feel like this is such an important aspect of our life that we can sometimes, I don't know, disregard, or it falls to the wayside sometimes. But we don't read just so that we can be good Christians or we can not feel guilty. But it's like a gift to us that we can find a path that leads us to true happiness. So, please join me in prayer. Most beloved Heavenly Parent, good morning. Thank you for another beautiful day. Thank you for all our brothers and sisters and families who've gathered here today. Each one of us might be in a different place in our life right now, but we're here looking for you, Heavenly Parent. We're looking for our next step in our life. We want to come closer to you. We want to find true happiness. And I just pray that each one of us can find a way to open the door to whatever it is that you had to give us today, Heavenly Parent. Whether we receive it through this message or through a conversation over lunch, Heavenly Parent, you're trying to reach us, and we just need to open the door. I pray that we can return to your word. Although we can't see you with our physical eyes, your word is a gift to us that we can hold in our hands, and we can see with our eyes, and we can read with our mouths, and we can hear with our ears. And we can learn who you are through your words. We can learn who we are. We can learn your love for us through your words. Heavenly Parent, I pray we can return to them. And if we're already immersed, I pray that we can really seek not only for understanding, but we can seek for your heart. And beyond that, that not only we can understand and find your heart, but that we can begin to live it in our lives. Because that is where we'll find our true happiness. And that is where you will be working in our lives, and we will touch other people. Thank you again for this message. I know it's a message for myself as well. We just want to conclude this service and offer this prayer in my name, Michael Adonia Henschrick, the Blessed Central family. Amen and on you. Thank you, everyone.